Hello my frugal friends, welcome back to our place for another video. Today I'm going to revisit one of my old videos that was starting a pantry with just $20. I recorded this back at the beginning of 2021. If you'd like to go back and check out that video, I will leave it linked below. But basically the premise was, what would I go and buy if I only had $20 left over in my grocery budget and I wanted to start building a pantry? So I went and got 12 items that I thought would be a great base to start building a pantry, working off the premise that I wasn't going to go and buy things that I would use as part of a meal. So I'm not going to stock the pantry with things like tins of tomatoes or black beans or flour, because I would buy those specifically if I was going to make a recipe that was going to use those. But what if the things that I would need to have on hand just to elevate the meals that I was making and take them to a next level? So how do I take some pasta and a tin of tomatoes and make it better? Well, that's where my pantry supply was going to come in. So back then I went and got 12 items for under $20. But the last couple of years have seen inflation come and creep up on all of us. And I've had a lot of questions on some of my older videos about whether or not it is possible to still do that today. So today we're going to go and find out if we can still build a pantry, those basic items, with just $20. All right, so the first thing I wanted to look at was, it's been a couple of years. Would I even buy the same things that I did back then? So it's been almost 3 years since I last recorded this video. Our dietary patterns have changed a little bit. We were eating a fairly standard Australian diet back then. We've now moved over to a more whole food, plant-based diet. We're trying to minimize the amount of processed foods that we consume. But if I was starting a pantry, would I even buy the same things? And the good news is, guys, I've just gone and picked all of this literally out of my pantry, and I still have the exact same 12 ingredients. I am still using them. So good news is they have stood the test of time. The next thing I would say is there anything that I would change and would be a little bit different? So first of all, the first thing is, when I did that back in 2021, I was looking at the cheapest items, and that often meant getting small containers. The truth is, realistically, things that I use all the time, I'm going to try and buy in bulk, because then I'm going to get the best bang for my buck. It's not always possible to start off with the big, like this one's about $6, I think, but you can get a small container of cinnamon for $2, and that'll get you started. When there is more room in your budget and you can work out what you're using a lot of, then you can go and buy those items in bulk and save even more. But the same basic ingredients are still here, except for one little caveat I'm going to put in there, and that is this guy. Yes, it still says Parmesan, but if you guys have been hanging around my channel for long enough, you know that hiding in my Parmesan shaker is something called Nutritional yeast. This is a sort of a plant-based substitute, if you would like, for Parmesan. It has a similar flavor profile and works in recipes in the exact same way. So if you are not plant-based and you do eat dairy, then I would still include Parmesan. I happen to use Nutritional yeast in replacement of that, but it's still essentially the same product, the same item in my pantry. So I'm going to keep that in there and say, yes, I'm still using all the same things, except for that one little variation there. So this big packet here, again, we're buying in bulk, so this is $8 for this packet. You're not going to go and use $8 of your $20 budget to start with something like this, but you can certainly go and get a small packet of Parmesan for about $2 from both Coles and Woolies. So we're still pretty much on track. So let's start at the start and talk about what I would get and why. I would always start with salt and pepper. If you don't get anything else, get salt and pepper. Again, we have these in a grinder. It's slightly more expensive, but you can buy some really cheap starter packs from both Coles and Woolies. It'll get you going with salt and pepper, and it's only going to cost you a couple of bucks each. Salt and pepper is going to take pretty much everything that you cook to the next level. Salt is going to bring out your flavors, and your pepper is going to add a little bit more of a spice and variety to your meal. So if you do nothing else, salt and pepper is a great place to start. The next thing that I would definitely put on the list is stock powder. So again, this can be used to actually create stock, or you can use it to flavor your dishes because it does have flavor in it. So if you don't buy any other herbs and spices, you can still flavor your meals with stock. It's a great budget, entry-level flavor enhancer for your meals. And again, we have this one in a larger container, and I like the fact that we can have this in the caravan and I don't have to worry about ending up with stock everywhere because it's got a nice secure lid. But again, you can start with some stock for about $2 from both Coles and Woolies. I would also add to that list, interestingly enough, soy sauce, which can be added to a lot more than just Asian foods. I actually put soy sauce in lots of different things, including spaghetti bolognese, which I know sounds really strange, but it's got a nice beefy, they call it umami flavor. So if you are having a lot of vegetables and you're using that to bulk out your meals and you're not having a lot of meat, or perhaps you're having no meat, using something like soy sauce, which has got those great umami flavors, is going to make it taste a bit beefy, a bit meaty, but it's also got a lot of salt in it, so it's going to enhance the flavor of your meal. If you use soy sauce, you obviously probably don't need to put extra sea salt in it as well, but this is a great one to have on hand. And again, you can get it in a much smaller bottle than what we have. We have a large bottle because we use a lot of it, and this one is plastic, and buying it in bulk saves us money. But again, if you just want to get started, a couple of bucks at both Coles and Woolies, and you can put some soy sauce in your pantry. All right, I'm going to move on to our herbs and spices at this stage because in my personal opinion, this I think is where I would focus building a pantry up, building a selection of herbs and spices to elevate your meals and your cooking. Now, this one's a little bit different. This is cinnamon. This is more for baking, but interestingly enough, cinnamon is quite flexible in that I do add this to things like chili and some Mexican dishes to sort of give it a more fuller flavor. Similar in the way that it works to things like cumin, but if you don't have that, then cinnamon can be a good place to start. And it's flexible because you can use it both in your main meals, but it's great for baking as well and for breakfast. So we'll often put cinnamon in with our oats, gives it a little bit of extra flavor. And like I said, it's probably the most versatile because it's going to take you from your breakfast meals, your baking, across to your savory dinners, and you can even use it in desserts as well. Although it's not a sweet spice, you can use it in more desserts and baking and sort of sweeter dishes. Hopefully that makes sense. So I would start, interestingly enough, with cinnamon. The next thing I would also move over to is just a good old mixed herbs. So whether you went mixed herbs, whether you went Italian herbs, anything that's got a variety of herbs in it is going to be quite versatile, and it's going to be great to go in any of your savory meals that you do, spaghetti bolognese, if you do meatballs or meatloaf or anything like that, it's going to be great. But also just to add to your other dishes, even if you were, say, to do a chili, you could actually add a bit of Italian herbs or mixed herbs in there as well, and just to give it a little bit of extra flavor profile. Again, the herbs that you pick are really going to be dependent on the type of cooking that you like to do. So I've got cinnamon, I've got mixed herbs, and then the one that I have picked today, but I also picked last time, is a Cajun seasoning. And the reason why I've picked this is because this is the sort of spice that my family likes to add to things. We do a lot of Mexican inspired stuff. So look, realistically, there's a couple of different things we could swap this out for, depending on what you like. Maybe you really like taco seasoning. Maybe you went for more of a Middle Eastern blend. It would really depend on the types of meals that your family likes to eat and the flavors that you enjoy the most. So if you prefer more Indian style food, then go for something that's going to have a curry or something. Go for something different is what I suppose I'm saying. But go for a mixed spice that is going to have the flavors of the meals that you like. And again, these guys start at about $2, so not very expensive at all. I would also add a sauce that you like, because sometimes just chucking sauce on a meal makes a huge difference. So we have sweet chili, and I use this because it's great just to add as a finishing touch to meals, but also because I use this as a base for some of my stir-fried dishes. And with a combination of our sweet chili, the soy sauce, the stock powder, and the cornflour, which I'll get to in a moment, I can actually make a variety of different stir-fry sauces that can go from being a sweet chili to what you'd put on like a chicken and cashew, something a bit meatier and beefier, almost like a beef and black bean. There's a lot that you can do with just a couple of ingredients. So that does bring me then to the cornflour. This is great to have on hand in the pantry. Cornflour is used as a thickening agent. So don't use this for baking. What we're actually going to use this for is for thickening up our meal. So if you're making a stew or a soup and you want it to be a little bit thicker, a tablespoon or so of corn flour mixed up with a little bit of cold water into a slurry and then added into your dish is going to help thicken it up so you get that nice thick creamy consistency. And again, is something that I use when I make my sauces for stir fries. This is what I use to help thicken the sauce up. You don't need a lot of it. Like I said, about a tablespoon would usually be what I would put in a big stew for, say, a family of 6. So corn flour is going to last you a long time, but again, this is really cheap. This cost me less than $1.50 and it will probably last me about a year. The other thing that I would add that I don't use a lot of but do occasionally is sugar. So yes, I have been into this one. But again, just a pinch of sugar added to a very acidic meal. Maybe your spaghetti bolognese isn't quite right. Those tomatoes are quite acidic. You're going to cut through it with just a pinch of sugar. So not including sugar from a baking point of view, but from a cooking point of view, having a little bit of sugar on hand just to cut through some of your dishes to sweeten them up a little bit. Perhaps you're sprinkling a little bit of brown sugar or raw sugar along with your cinnamon onto your breakfast, and then you're getting a winning flavor combination there as well. So I would include a little bit of sugar. And vinegar, which I know is a bit of a strange one to add in there. Vinegar actually has a multitude of uses, and I like to keep it on hand in the pantry. Everything from adding a little bit of vinegar to regular old milk, letting it sit for 5 minutes, actually turns it into buttermilk. It can be used in cooking. Sometimes some of your recipes call for it. You can use it to quick pickle your some of your like onions and things like that, just to take your meal to the next level. And you can also use it for cleaning as well. Like there's a heap of different uses for vinegar, and at about $1.50 for a 2-litre container. Again, that's a really cheap addition to the pantry, and it's going to have a multitude of different uses. So because I already had all of these things on hand in my pantry, because these are the things that I genuinely do use all the time, and I think that they're a great base to start building up a pantry from, because I had them, I didn't actually go to the supermarket and buy new ones to use as props in this video to show you guys, because I already had all of this stuff. Granted, some of my containers are larger than what I would actually go and purchase first up if I was just starting my pantry from scratch, but it's still the same ingredients on the inside. But what I did do was actually jump on my phone, and I went to the Coles app and the Woolies app, and I went and added to my shopping cart all of these ingredients at the cheapest price that I could possibly buy them. So some of the items that I put into my online shopping cart may have had different sizes to the things that I've shown you today, but they're all the same ingredients. And the great news is, believe it or not, even though we are 3 years down the track and with inflation, you could go to Coles today in Bustleton, because that's where we happen to be in WA, and you could pick up all of these things from Coles for $21.55, or you could pop across the road to Woolies and you could pick them up there for $21.65. So basically it's gone up $1.50 over 3 years, but this is still a really good place to start building a pantry from scratch, to have items in there that is going to enhance the meals that you're cooking and just take those things to the next level. So if you are living on a tight budget, or you just want to save some money, you want to squeeze a little bit extra out of your budget, so perhaps you can throw it at your debt so you can pay your debt off, or maybe you're saving for something and you are working with a tight grocery budget, you can still have a couple of things on hand to elevate your meals and start off a pantry with basically 20 bucks in your pocket, which I think is really good. Now, over time, I would recommend adding to this little pile of goodies that you have so that you can continue to keep doing that. So perhaps you're allocating $5 or $10 of your weekly budget to building up a pantry. Well, there you have it. That is how I would still start a pantry in 2024 now, if I had $20 free in my budget to go and pick up some things that I'm going to use essentially to elevate the meals that I am making. Now, I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. What are the sorts of things that you would use to start building a pantry? Remembering that the premise of this one that I sort of set out was not to buy things that I would actually use to make meals from. I'm not trying to create a stockpile and have a pantry that I can shop from first. So I'm not looking at things like having tinned tomatoes or beans or pasta or things like that readily on hand, assuming that if I'm going to make a pasta meal for dinner, I'm going to go and buy the ingredients for that. But what can I have back at home? Things like herbs and spices that I can use to elevate those meals. That's basically where I was coming from with this video. And I'd love to hear from you guys. What are the sorts of things that you would use to start building a supply at home, to start elevating the meals that you are cooking? What are some of the things that you would recommend to people who are just starting out? Maybe they've just moved out of home and mum's been cooking for them forever and they are going to start the cooking adventure in their own home themselves. What are some things to have on hand to take your meals from bland to yummy, really quick and easy? One thing that I'm going to add before I say goodbye to you guys that is missing from my list that you might want to add to yours, and that would be, I did not include any type of cooking oil. Now that is a personal preference for me because I don't really cook with oil. I prefer to have non-stick pans and use a little bit of stock or a little bit of water just to keep things moving in my pan. That is partly because of dietary requirements for me, partly because we're sort of following the starch solution and trying to eat a whole food plant-based diet. I'm not 100% on that because I do have some things that still include oil, but I don't cook with it. And it's actually been a really good way to save money. But for a lot of people, they do not have pans that are non-stick, so you might need to consider some kind of cooking oil in your pantry supplies to cook with, because it is a consideration that I did not think of until just then. So there you go, guys. You can add that one down in the comments. Cooking oil might be something that would be a good thing to add to a basic start-up pantry supply. All right, let's leave it there. I hope you guys are having an absolutely fantastic week. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you found it useful, if you could please give it a thumbs up. It really does help me, lets me know the kind of content you guys are enjoying and what you would like to see more of. And if you'd like to see more stuff from me and you haven't already, you could go ahead and hit that little subscribe button right now. It is the best way to stay up to date, particularly if you go and tick the little bell. You'll be notified when my next video comes out, which will be very shortly, and I hope to see you then. Have a fantastic week and we'll catch up soon. Bye.